Good evening, everybody, and welcome to radio.com on what will be a very, very busy Mike's On program. We have Ross Tucker on the NFL in just a couple of minutes. We have the best college football analyst on this night of the national championship, Gary Danson, join us at 6 o'clock when we're also joined by WFAN. So he will join us at 6, give us his thoughts on Clemson and LSU, the battle on beatens, the quarterback battle tonight in the showdown in the national title game. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this baseball today because I want to do football. I plan to do football. I'm doing football. That's all there is to it because you know what? This is an old story, but what we got was what we expected. That is both guys suspended. What we didn't know is both would be fired. I think that the commissioner handled it very well. I agree with his suspension. I agree with what he handed down. But what these guys now have to realize is these two guys, as the general manager and the manager both get, no one else got suspensions, but I didn't think they would. Includes Beltran. Coaches aren't going to get suspensions. Cora's going to get it now for what he did in 18 with the Red Sox. That investigation's underway. If there's anything there, he's going to get suspended. Okay? That's coming. But not for anything he did in Houston because they weren't in control. They weren't in power. As the owner said as he fired them, they didn't originate it, but they did nothing to stop it. So the manager, the general manager both get fired. And what that means is that they're suspended for a year, but they're going to be out of baseball a lot longer than that because who's going to touch them? Nobody's going to touch them. You're an owner. You're going to hire those guys? How are you going to stand in front of a bunch of fans or stand in front of a media base in any city and say, I'm bringing these guys in? It's going to be impossible to do. So these guys are going to be out of baseball a long time. Let's see how long it takes them to get back into baseball if they ever get back into baseball. So they were too good. They were too smart for their own good, and they got hit real hard. I give Manfred credit. I give the owner credit for handling things in a very credible way. Okay, and now the Astros can start to recover and move on. We'll see what happens with the Red Sox. I think there's a suspension coming there, and then we'll see as we take it from there. But we got this almost the suspension that, I mean, a lot of people, including me, came up with the same suspension, basically. And I think that was a logical one, including the money, the draft picks, and the suspensions. I think Manfred handled things very, very well. Now, crazy weekend in the NFL. And two very, very good championship games coming this weekend because you have the Andy Reid story as he is now one step away from the Super Bowl again and 2 steps away from finally winning that championship. And to get there was a crazy route he took. You don't want to try that again at home. 24 points down in one of the bizarre games in NFL playoff history because of the way the comeback was orchestrated. We'll get to that in a little while. Number two, you have that storyline and the great Kansas City offense going up against a very, very live underdog in Tennessee, led by a brilliant, brilliant back playing at the top of his game right now. Vrabel doing a great job. The defense doing a great job. Tannehill doing his job. And Henry just an amazing specimen right now at the running back position. We talked about it last Friday. In the Saturday games, we said it'll come down to whether the running backs can run. In one game, Cook couldn't. They lost. In the other game, Henry could. They won. It was as simple as that. He just didn't know it going in. Now, no one knew they would dominate the way they dominated Baltimore. I thought on the weekend that I thought all 4 home teams would win. But I thought the Saturday teams would win under the number and the Sunday teams would both win over the number. The Sunday teams both won over the number. The Saturday teams one won under the number, one won over the number. So that's the way it worked out. But I thought all 4 would advance. I picked San Francisco by 4. I picked Baltimore by 6. I picked the other 2 games. I picked the Packers and the Chiefs to win by more than the number, but not having any idea that the Chief game would ever look like anything it did. It was one of the strangest games I've ever seen, and I still go back to it. Despite everything that went on in that game, I cannot fathom for a second that Bill O'Brien, up 24-7, having the game start in a dream fashion. All right, and finally, after a kick return, Kansas City got a short field and scored. Fine, you know they're going to score touchdowns. You know how explosive they are. But to go and try to fake a punt in your end after they just scored a touchdown and you're up 24-7 with 8 minutes left in the first half, you've guaranteed yourself you're going to be in the lead at halftime. If you play things right, you might have a significant lead at halftime. It changes the way you play the game in the second half against that explosive team. Instead, you give them a short field. Now they're right back in the game. You didn't know your next guy was going to turn the ball over, and now you've given them 3 touchdowns in 3 minutes, and they're not only back in the game, they're going to run you right out of the building, which they did. You knew when that game went to half and the Kansas City had the lead that there was not a chance in the world that Tennessee was going to see anything again that was going to be close in that game. I mean, that Houston was going to see anything again that was even close in that game. I think he made one of the colossal blunders I've ever seen in a postseason game. I was stunned that he would try that. And the idea that, well, we weren't going to punt in the game, we were going to... Wait a second. You're up 17. You had stopped them early in the game. Everything had gone right for you except they returned a kick. You had scored every time you had the ball. Why would you give them a short field after they just scored a touchdown? It's insanity. It was one of the worst decisions I've ever seen. And then to show you how lost he is, later in the game, down 17, he's going to punt until his quarterback pleads with him. You up 17, you're faking punts, and 17 down, you're going to punt in the fourth quarter. What are you doing? He had to call timeout and then go on 4th down. I mean, let me get that right. You went for it on 4th down, up 17 in the first half in your own end, and then you were going to punt down 17 in the fourth quarter? Huh? Sometimes, folks, I watch these games, and I wonder where the coaches leave their brains. I've never seen anything like it. Never seen anything like it. And then give Tennessee all the credit in the world. I mean, they just played them right off their feet. And I'm not going to give you I told you so. Because I didn't think Jackson played that badly. But until he wins some playoff games, can we cool it? He did have 3 big turnovers. He's going to take a tremendous amount of punishment. He isn't a great passer outside throwing the football. So before we turn him into the greatest thing since sliced bread, how about he wins a playoff game or 2? I thought Baltimore would win. I thought it would be close, but I thought they would win. All right? So I'm not saying I thought Tennessee was going to win. I didn't. I thought Baltimore was a better team. I give Tennessee great credit for what they did. But I think everyone's gotten crazy with the quarterback. I've said that all year. I know I've been in the minority by saying that. And I'm not doing it. I told you so. Because I didn't think he played that badly in the game. There's a lot of drops. There's a lot of things that went on. But you also know he does not throw the ball well outside. And until he does that, he is not the great, complete quarterback that you're going to need. He's wonderful with his legs, but that's going to be less and less. And he did have 3 big, big turnovers in the games. Going to Sunday's games, we mentioned Kansas City already, so I don't have much there. Minnesota, there wasn't anything to talk about. They stopped Cook, game, set, match. I thought with Quan Alexander and Ford back, San Francisco was back to being a dominant defense that they were the first 9 weeks. You saw that. And I thought Minnesota could hang in that game. I thought they'd do a better job running the ball. Once I saw they couldn't run the ball at all, that game was over. And then Sunday, I think you got the game that you expected to get. Here's Seattle charging at the end. You don't want to give them the ball back. And Rodgers makes 2 great throws on 3rd down to basically keep Wilson from maybe making a charge and winning the game. He did make his charge. He just didn't get the ball one last time. And one quarterback put the other one away. So now you have Tennessee and the great back going against the explosive attack in Kansas City and all the history that Andy Reid has to overcome. And then you have a very, very cocky San Francisco team, and they're a little cocky, getting ready to play an all-time quarterback as an underdog. So you have 2 live underdogs, 2 very solid favorites. As far as their ability, we know that Kansas City and San Francisco are very solid teams. They deserve to be favored, but both underdogs have something you can really latch onto, namely Henry and namely Rodgers. And that gives you something really to deal with. Okay, like I said, Garrett Danielson on the Fan at 6, and we'll turn our attention and preview Clemson and LSU, which comes your way tonight. And even if you don't like it from a college standpoint, if you're not a college fan, I promise you plenty of action if you like offense and you're going to look at the next two quarterbacks who are going to be taken number one in the draft. This year, Burrow. Next year, Lawrence. And we'll preview that with Gary Danielson coming up at 6. All right. Ross Tucker works on radio.com. Home and Home is his podcast. You can reach him at Ross Tucker NFL on social media. So let's get his thoughts on things and welcome him into the program. Ross, welcome. How are you?
Mike, I'm fantastic, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Let me give me a thought on each game. Let me first start Minnesota, San Francisco. Give me a thought.
Really surprised after the way that the Vikings had played in New Orleans and the fact that the Niners had not beaten anybody by more than one score in 6 weeks. I loved the Vikings getting the 7 points. That was one of my best bets of the weekend.
I picked it too. I picked it. I didn't know that they would be impacted by Alexander and Ford coming back as well as they were.
I think that's fair, Mike. I'm also surprised. A week after, and I guess it was 6 days after, they dominated the Saints up front, both sides of the ball.
They did.
They got dominated.
They did. Completely dominated. Once you couldn't run the ball, you knew it was dead.
And they couldn't stop the run. Yeah. I was very surprised. That was the only bet I lost, but I was surprised. I really thought the Vikings had a chance to win that game. You're talking about a Niners team that had barely beaten everybody they had played, and they had lost the Falcons. So that one really surprised me.
Well, we agreed on that. I took the points also, the 7. I thought I picked San Francisco by 4. I thought they'd win, but I thought they'd win close. I also thought Baltimore would win under the number, but win. So I got to admit I was surprised they were able to dominate. And I've been an anti-Jackson guy. Not that I'm knocking him, but I think people have been way overboard. But I also think it wasn't him. He did a couple things I didn't love. He did turn the ball over 3 times, but their ability to follow their game plan and then have a back, I can't remember. Now, I watched Jim Brown play. Jim Brown's a little different, and it was a different NFL. This guy is a force, the likes of which I have not seen since, I'd say, the days of Earl Campbell with what he's doing right now.
Yeah, I called that game, Mike. I was in the booth for Westwood 1, and very surprised. Now, I took the Titans getting the points, and I liked the under, so both of those came through for me. The thing that I don't think people are talking about enough, especially when they played the Patriots, is how often Henry is getting 3 yards before he's touched. I don't know if you've ever met him, Mike. I've met him a couple times. He's a D-end. I mean, he looks like a D-end or a tight end.
He's a big man.
He is all of 6'3".
Big man.
250. He's kind of like Brandon Jacobs' size.
Yeah, gotcha.
But he's a decent amount faster than Brandon.
Oh, very fast. I mean,
and so
amazing.
When he gets these 5-yard runnies at you, I mean, that's just physics.
And he runs through
guy,
people. You know, as you know, Ross, the Pats, they tackle well. Their corners tackle well. Their deep backs tackle well. He ran over them. He ran through them. He goes through people, this guy.
Correct. And I was thinking earlier today, who else has been like that? I mean, I'm thinking of names like Bo Jackson,
yes.
Christian Okoye.
And I go back to Earl Campbell. I mean, Earl Campbell was this kind of running back.
And you know what's crazy too, Mike, is I don't think they're going to do it, but the Titans have almost the perfect team to try to beat the Chiefs.
Well, they got to be able to move the chains. I mean, that's really it. Can they keep him pinned to the sideline? And that's going to be the question I'd ask you first when we get through the other 2 games and we go forward. Can he keep Mahomes on the sideline?
Well, that's certainly what they're going to try to do. I mean, it's going to be like when the Giants beat the Bills in the Super Bowl in 1990.
Yep.
It's going to be that
They
kind
kept
of
the
game
ball
plan.
for 40 minutes. They did. They kept it.
And that's the Titans. That's how they like to roll, and they believe. I mean, when you win in New England and you beat the number 1 seed Ravens, they're not worried about going into Kansas City.
Now, let me get to this, Ross. First, let me get to this stuff. First of all, I've never seen a game like the Kansas City game. I mean, it was one of the most bizarre games to see a team start as badly as Kansas City did and see them get back as quickly. And tell me this, what the heck is Bill O'Brien thinking? At 24-7, you have the game in where you are in control of this game. All right, they got a short field on a kick return, and now it's 24-7. Fine. There's 8 minutes left in the first half. Why are you faking punts in your own end against these guys?
Well, a couple things. I'm glad to hear you say you've never seen a game like that because you've been around longer than me. I couldn't think of one. People are
Strangest
talking about,
game. I've never seen a team come back that quickly because it was stunning how bad the Chiefs were. Everything they did, they dropped balls. They have a punt blocked. Hill drops the ball on the 5-yard line. I mean, everything. And then to see them turn the table, and all of a sudden now Texans can't do anything else. And I'm telling you right now, Ross, if you go back and look at the play, they did not execute that punt because they weren't committed to it, that punt, that fake punt. They didn't even I think they were half shocked they were going to do it.
Well, here's, Mike, when I realized Bill O'Brien doesn't know what he's doing, is in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, when he's going to punt up 17, down 17. What are you doing? You're going to fake a punt up 17 and you're going to punt on down 17?
Mike, I've never seen anything like it. And not only what you just said, the Chiefs had scored 7 straight touchdowns. And Deshaun Watson comes off the field, and he looks at O'Brien, and I almost felt like he said to him, Coach, you know they just scored 7
Right. Are you out of your mind?
Right?
He said to him, we got to go on 4th down. What are you out of your mind? Then he calls timeout. He uses a timeout there to have to go on 4th down. And this is a guy who faked a punt up 17.
You want to know what's even worse? They only have 1 pick in the first 2 rounds the next 2 years. They have to give Tunsil a contract. They obviously have to give Deshaun Watson a contract. This is what happens when the GM is also the head coach, but he's acting only in the head coach's best interest. They'll be okay again next year, but this is going to eventually really, really hurt them. He is drowning them of resources.
Now, the Tennessee defense, Ross, we're talking about Ross Tucker. He has the podcast on radio.com, Home and Home. You can get him at Ross Tucker NFL on social media. Now, let's spin ahead to Sunday. We have Titans, who a lot of people are going to be on their bandwagon. They already are. You got the team that's Vrabel's done a nice job. The quarterback's done a nice job. They've done everything right. We know that Andy's snake bit in these big games. He's only won 1. He's 1-5 in title games. We know that, okay? We know this, the whole deal. But here's the thing. Do you think, all things being equal, that Tennessee can muster anything defensively, either in terms of rush or in terms of coverage, to slow down the Kansas City offense?
Yeah, I think they can. I mean, they had a really good game plan against the Ravens, keeping Lamar Jackson in the pocket like they did. Some people call that like a cage rush, where you want to try to keep the quarterback in the cage. It was really, really impressive. So they're not going to let them have anything cheap, Mike. I mean, they're not. Mahomes
Make them come the long field. Make them come the long field. That's what you want to do.
They're going to make them do the long field.
Right.
They're going to run the crap out of the ball. I like this Arthur Smith, the offensive.
And their punter is a weapon. And their punter is a real weapon, no question.
Yeah. Look, I still like the Chiefs to win the game.
You think it's going to be a close game?
I think it is a close game, and I really think, sort of how I felt about the Ravens and Titans, the team that scores first, like if the Titans get behind, they're in major, major trouble. If they get a lead, though, Vrabel's going to milk that thing.
We're talking with Ross. All right, let's go to Sunday. Let's go to the other game. You have the Packers, who, let's be honest, they've been weird this year. They've won a lot of games, but they haven't been overly impressive. Even Rodgers, who I have incredible respect for, and I expect him to make those throws late yesterday. I expect him to make those throws on 3rd down. I just always do. I have great respect. He's an all-time great player, but I don't know about this team. I've seen, they've puzzled me all year. I'm very impressed by San Francisco, although I'm a little worried, and I've been a big proponent of their quarterback, but I'm a little worried what I saw from him, because they actually tried to take the ball out of his hands on Sunday after that on Saturday after that first interception. Now, they were running it so well because he made some kind of strange throws and some weird throws in that game against Minnesota.
Well, the interception was really bad. That's number one. But number two, here's what I think is so crazy about the Packers. This is the first time in a while, Mike, that they can win games with their defense. It's the first time in a while they can win games with their running game. They still have Rodgers. They're 14-3, and yet everybody kind of feels the same way about them, like you do and I do. Like, if they have a running game, and they do, and they have a defense, and they do, and they still have Rodgers, why are they not like the favorite? But they're just not, because they haven't put it all
together. And they've looked awful a couple of times this year. You know, they've had a couple of bad games, and they had one against San Francisco.
2 primetime games in California, Chargers and Niners, their offensive line got annihilated.
Right, and that's the question I have for you right now.
Line.
With them healthy again, can their offensive line stand up to the 49ers?
I don't think so. I mean, that's the question. Look, they're not going to win this game unless Rodgers has a game for the ages and has some legitimate heroics. I think they'll be better than they were the last time when the Niners beat them by like 40 points. I don't think the O-line will be that bad, but those guys looked fresh. Getting D Ford back, they finally got the inside guy. I mean, those guys looked fresh. They looked ready to go. I like the Niners in that game.
Did Garoppolo worry you at all?
He did, and you don't even need to ask me. He clearly worried Kyle
No
Shanahan
question. He took the ball out of his hands. He never let him throw the ball anymore. But they were having so much success running it, they didn't really have to throw it, you know?
Right, and what I think isn't as important as what Kyle Shanahan clearly thinks, which is that, you know what, let's not do it. But I look at it the other way. I mean, they had a touchdown drive where they just ran the ball 8 straight times right down the Vikings' throat. So if they're able to do that against Mike Pettin and the Packers defense, I like the Niners. They had gone 6 weeks without the D-line being dominant, without really being able to run it that well, and they did both on Saturday against the Vikings. I expect them to be able to do it the same against the Packers.
And the other thing is, that game last week, Kittle didn't even get going in that game. I mean, he's one of the best players in the league, and he had for him really a non-existent game last week. He did nothing. If they're going to come up and march people into the box and try and deal with him and those wideouts, and they have good wideouts. I mean, they have underrated wideouts. I mean, that could be very tough. That's going to be a tall order for me for the Green Bay's defense this week. I think it's going to be a very tough matchup for them.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. He's an unbelievable football player. You know, I mean, I think Rob Gronkowski's the best tight end I've ever seen because of the combination of the blocking and the receiving. And I'm not saying Kittle is Rob Gronkowski, but I didn't think we'd see another guy this close to Gronk this soon. I think he's a little bit better run after the catch. He's not the same big target in the end zone or the red zone, but he blocks. It's crazy how well he blocks. As a former offensive lineman, I love watching him. I'm with you. Kittle is a difference maker.
Great, really terrific player, no question. And I've been a big Garoppolo guy. I was very surprised how loose he was with the ball. And really, I was equally surprised at how dominant their defense was because, let's be honest, they shut Minnesota down to historic proportions. I'm a huge Dalvin Cook guy. He never had a chance in that game. He never even had one hole the whole game. He had nowhere to go. Every time he moved, he got hit by 3 guys.
No, they were absolutely flying around. And I know Russell Wilson's amazing. I think he's the best quarterback in the league. If I could only have one for the next 5 to 8 years, I still go with Russell Wilson. But the Packers concern me the way they let the Seahawks get back in that game. I mean, Seahawks couldn't run the ball a lick, and they were still able to get back in it. So I'm kind of leaning back towards with you, which is that the Packers, for whatever reason, haven't really been able to put it all together. And I don't see that Niners D coordinator Saleh letting Devontae Adams have 8 catches for 160. I mean, how do you let their one receiver kill you like that? I just don't think the Niners will do that.
Yeah, I don't either. And I agree with you on that. That was a very tough matchup, which was perplexing. We're talking with Ross Tucker. San Francisco has that look. Now, listen, normally I would say this, okay? I'm never laying serious points against Rodgers. I mean, that because first of all, if you're up 13-12, you know he's putting it in the end zone late in the game on a backdoor. I mean, you'll be happy to get out of there with a 6-point win. You know he's going to be doing that. So I mean, unless he's down 35-10, you're going to get hit with a backdoor cover with him. I mean, almost every time. So giving him 7 points is almost like stealing. I mean, him being a 7-point underdog. But I don't trust them in this game. I think they're going to get a lot of points put on them.
Yeah, I understand, and I think maybe it's because I'm a former player, Mike. I don't like laying a lot of points.
I agree.
We've already seen the huge upset.
Yep.
Titans were getting 10, they win by 16. Vikings were getting 8, they win in New Orleans. I'm with you.
But you win when you can physically control the game. The Titans have physically controlled the last 2 games. Minnesota won in New Orleans because they physically controlled the game. I don't think the Packers can physically control the game against San Francisco.
No, but I don't think they'll lose by more than 2 touchdowns. And when it becomes 2 touchdowns, I'm exactly agreeing with you.
Yeah, Rodgers will put it in late.
Rodgers,
You know that. Yes.
Yeah, he's gonna get that touchdown.
Very hard to lay points against him. I totally agree. And that's why these are both very, very, from a betting standpoint, very live underdogs, because you're both getting 7 points or a little more in the Kansas City game. And I still worry about Kansas City because you know how you see that team that just Ross is on that roll where everything's clicking and they believe. Tennessee has that look. I have great respect for Andy's offense, and I'm rooting for Andy sentimentally because I like him personally. I want to see him get a Super Bowl to finally finish his career off and go into the Hall of Fame, and he needs that. But I really worry that Tennessee has that look that you see from teams that wind up in the Super Bowl.
So it's funny that you say that, because I agree with that, what you said about the Titans. But I would also tell you, doesn't it seem like, Mike, whenever somebody has an epic game or an epic comeback like the Chiefs did, that team usually ends up going to the Super Bowl, and then that becomes the story that we talk about. Hey, remember when they were down 24-0 and they came all the way back? So both the Titans and the Chiefs have that look of like what usual Super Bowl teams do, and you're like, oh yeah, remember when. So I think you could say that with both teams.
Let me ask you a crazy question. Can Henry get 200 and the Chiefs win?
The Belichick, Thurman Thomas philosophy, right?
Yes. Yes.
I don't think – I mean, if he gets 200, if he gets 200, they're scoring at least a couple touchdowns. And I think this Tennessee defense is pretty good. I mean, they gave up 13 to Brady, 12 to Lamar Jackson. So I think if he gets 200, I think the Titans win.
You think the Titans win? So if you were going to pick one to win the game outright, you would pick Tennessee over Green Bay, or would you make it even?
Man, that's tough. I'll go Titans. I'll go Titans just because of the way they're playing right now, and seeing them up.
Which of the four is the best team in your mind? If I put everything equal, which of the four teams right now do you think, soup to nuts, all phases of the game, which of the four teams is the best team?
I'm going to say the Chiefs, but they got to have a healthy Chris Jones.
Yeah, and that's a weird one. I don't know if he. I agree. I want that now. A calf injury can be very tricky, hard to heal, very hard to heal.
I wouldn't play him this week.
You wouldn't?
No, based on any guy I ever played with, and if you saw Mark Ingram, that was 3 weeks out, and he was not the same guy Saturday night. He just wasn't.
Hey, calf injuries don't heal. I know that from. I have a close friend who's a top orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Steve O'Brien from Special Surgery, and he always tells me trickiest muscle pull to deal with is a calf injury. Absolutely tricky,
and I think
very hard to heal.
Chiefs are smart enough. Not like they're holding him out for the Super Bowl, but they're just going to realize that he's going to re-injure it if he plays. I think they're going to hope that they can win without him on Sunday and then try to get him right for the Super Bowl.
If Tennessee gets the ball back and they're down 3 points, but they're in the 2-minute, can Tannehill move them, or is that out absolutely where they can't run it? Where they can't run it and run it and run it, they have to throw the ball. That's the way it is. You're in a 2-minute drill. Do you have any faith in Tannehill in that spot?
I do have a little faith. I wouldn't say a lot, but I think what gives him a shot is he can run. So, like in that situation, he could run for a couple first downs. He doesn't need to just Joe Montana it all the way down the field. He can actually scramble and run because he's an athlete. I just keep thinking about this, though, Mike. I mean, I grew up outside of Philly. Can you imagine if Andy Reid loses this game?
No.
Listen. Mike, think about this. They got gifted a bye by the Dolphins beating New England. They got gifted the home AFC Championship game by the Titans beating the Ravens on Saturday night. They're never going to have an easier path.
Absolutely.
To the Super Bowl.
I was thinking that yesterday at 24-0.
I
was thinking that yesterday at 24-0, saying this guy's never going to win. And then I said, you know what? It's still early. You got to take that into account. And they got back so fast, you didn't even have to deal with it. Okay, so they win yesterday. But I saw it with Schottenheimer, and I think Andy's a better coach anyway. I saw it in Chuck Knox, and Chuck Knox was a really good coach. You talk to anybody from that era, everyone will tell you how good a coach Chuck Knox was. They swear by him. He never got a break in a big playoff game. Something always happens to Andy. Now, he has been to a Super Bowl, as we know. All right, and they lost a three-pointer in a mysterious game to the Pats, as we know. So he has gotten there once, but he's also had some of the worst losses you could have. Would it surprise me if he got his heart broken? I have to admit it wouldn't. Although I do think, if you put a gun to my head, I'd pick Kansas City. But and I'm hoping with my heart because I want to see him win a Super Bowl. And I think this. I think if he gets the team to. I think if Mahomes and the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, they're going to win. I believe that this year. I believe if they get through this game, they will win it all. I think it'll be their year, and they'll play well in the Super Bowl. In what'll be a game, I think I think it'll be a good 2 weeks for Andy. But I worry about this game against this Tennessee team, which right now I think and you know this, from the water boy right through the best player in Henry, they believe. They think they got something, and you know how it's like when you get on those teams. These guys believe that they're going to beat whoever's in front of them.
Totally agree, and I think, this is a disaster if Andy Reid loses this
I
game.
agree.
He's almost never going to come back from it if they lose this one because it's just set up so perfectly for them, and it'll reinforce all of those narratives about he has to win this game. But on the flip side, it's like Vrabel's playing with house money. The Titans.
Without question. Without question. You know what? Do you think the Packers are playing with house money or no because of the age of the quarterback?
No, because of the age of the quarterback, and I think the quarterback.
This is a first-year coach in the Super Bowl. In the AFC NFC title game, a first-year coach.
Yeah, but I think Rodgers. Mike, Rodgers only ever been to one Super Bowl.
Right.
For the last 10 years, people have been saying he's the best quarterback ever. He's better than Brady. He's been to one Super Bowl.
Yep.
I think Rodgers knows this is not house money. This is his opportunity, his chance to at least get back to a second Super Bowl. If they don't win that game against the Steelers 10 years ago, we're talking about him like Dan Marino. He's the guy that never won a Super Bowl.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, you look at all of them. It's tough to win Super Bowls no matter how many. Drew Brees has only won one Super Bowl. Peyton Manning, the second one wasn't because of him. He only really won one Super Bowl, where it wasn't. The second one was defensive carried. We know that. So it's tough to win Super Bowls. It really is. It's hard to win. Brady, it's because of the system and the way where he landed and everything. It's hard to win Super Bowls. It really is. You know that. We know how many great quarterbacks. You know this, how good Dan Fouts was. You know how good Dan Marino was. These guys, never won a Super Bowl. Marino.
How about this? Mike, how about this? I'm talking with people in Baltimore, and they're like, oh, you know what? Next year we'll be – I'm like, wait a minute. Next year – so first of all, 14-2, best record ever for the Ravens. First time they were ever a number one seed. By next year, who knows if Lamar Jackson stays healthy the whole year.
You never know.
And by the way, they're going to have all these defensive coordinators. They're spending the whole offseason how to slow down the Ravens. Not only that, Judon, their only rusher, is a free agent. And, oh, by the way, they were the healthiest team in the league this year. They lost nobody. So anybody that thinks, oh, next year for the Ravens, it doesn't work.
Hey, just ask the Rams. Ask the Rams.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. And seeing the Ravens lose and seeing the Saints lose, not even being able to get to a conference championship game shows you just how hard it really is.
I have to admit, that surprised me. I didn't see that one coming. I did not think the Saints would get beat by Minnesota. I'm sorry. I thought the Saints were the last 5 weeks. He had been 15 touchdowns, no picks. They had been dominating. They had gotten the offensive line back, and gives them a credit for knowing how weak those guards were, because I thought they were back and healthy, and he knew those guards were vulnerable, moved both pass rushes inside and killed them. Absolutely killed them.
Yeah, that's a bad feeling. In 2003, Mike, you'll appreciate this. I was starting at right guard, and every passing play, it started with the first 3rd and long. The Giants moved Strahan over me. I was the gimp. I was the guy. I was like, oh, no. You never want to be the guy. You
That's
never
right.
want to be the guy that they say, hey, that's the guy we can Strahan. I think I said to him after one, I said, is this going to be all game? He's like, yep. I was like, oh, God, I'm dead.
Hey, that's like when they run the diamond look and put Reggie White over you. You know, look out. Here you go. Here's the all-day Reggie.
How about what the Eagles did against that center for the Seahawks, Fletcher Cox, lifting the guy up and throwing him? I've never seen that. That was unbelievable. Not a good feeling when you're the guy they want to pick on.
You do, if I remember right, we're talking with Ross Tucker. His podcast on radio.com is Home and Home, and you can get him at Ross Tucker NFL on social media. You dabble in the draft, don't you?
I love the draft.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me this. Burrow, in your mind, might have had the best college year any quarterback has ever had. That's a fair argument. I can go back to some great ones, including Roger Staubach at Navy, George Myra at Tulsa. I mean, at Miami, Jerry Rome at Tulsa. I can go through a million guys, but one of the great years of all time. You like him as a pro. You love him as a pro.
Right now, I love him as a pro because I love his pocket movement and awareness. I mean, I've never seen a guy almost play a perfect season. But here's the thing. We were talking earlier. Neither one of us have ever seen a game like the Chiefs-Texans game. Have you ever seen a guy, Mike, that was average one year and then awesome the next year?
Not like this. Not like this.
No, I mean, people say Kurt Warner. I'm like, Kurt didn't even play the year before. Maybe he would have been awesome.
How did this guy – the question is, how did this guy ever sit on the bench for 3 years?
Well, how did he go from average last year to awesome?
Everyone wants to canonize the offensive coordinator. I don't know, but this guy doesn't make a mistake. He doesn't make a bad read. He throws 7 touchdown passes without working up a sweat last week, and he missed 2 guys in the end zone, and they called the dogs off halfway through the third quarter. He could have thrown 10. We know that. Last 5 weeks, I just charted it. Last 6 weeks, I just charted it before for Gary Danielson. 25 touchdowns, 2 intercepts, and completed over 75% of his passes. 25 TDs, 2 intercepts in his last 6 games. And I'm talking about playing against Alabama, Georgia, Oklahoma. I'm not talking about playing against, second division teams here.
Well, what's interesting to me is tonight, one way or the other, there's going to be an epic college football story because it's either Burrow and Orgeron coming out of nowhere to do what they did this year, or if Clemson wins, we're talking about Trevor Lawrence being the best college football player ever.
And not only that, Dabo's got a dynasty. I mean, that's all there is to it.
But if they win tonight, Mike, Trevor's never lost the game.
Never.
He's 2 for 2.
Never.
National championships. He has to come back next year.
Now I make you a GM.
Can you do it 3 years in a row?
I make you a GM right now because I'm going to ask Gary Danielson this at 6. Make you a GM right now. Next 10 years, you want Burrow, you want Lawrence?
Lawrence.
I figured
Trevor Lawrence.
I think he's a better specimen, and he runs too. And a lot of people think he might be the best package we've seen come out in a long, long time.
Well, first of all,
look at his size.
His second year doing it, and Burrow's only done it 1 year. Secondly, he's a lot faster than Burrow.
Yeah, better athlete. And he's 6'6". And he's 6'6".
And he's got a better arm.
Yes.
I mean, so I'm taking – now, he wasn't as efficient this year as Burrow, but I'm taking Lawrence.
Some people, a couple people have said that they think Burrow's the next Brady, but remember, Brady was not a specimen coming out. Dr. Bryant told me when he used to do the physicals for the draft that he was the worst-bodied quarterback he had ever inspected in his entire life. Went up to New England, sat out the first year, threw about 1,000 passes a day, and lifted weights. So he became a different guy. There's no question about it. This Burrow, though, he's found success in college. He's going to be the first player picked. I don't think bust, but I worry if he's going to be as dynamic as everybody thinks outside this system. I'm a little puzzled by him, to be honest with you.
Well, Brady wasn't Brady in college, first of all. Then second of all, he actually reminds me of Romo. Burrow reminds me of Romo, the way he moves around the pocket.
Throws on the slide, throws on the move, you mean. Yeah, Romo was great at sliding in the pocket. Great, yes.
Yeah, he just had a real innate feel for it, spatial awareness. I feel like that's Burrow. I mean, I can't wait for tonight. It's going to be awesome. And look, we all know there's a lot of important positions in football and line and everything, but it's probably the 2 best quarterbacks tonight. I mean, That's the
Well,
sport. A
this
lot of
game,
times
there's
does
no
come down to
way.
those
There's
guys.
no way this game isn't both teams over 35 because they can't stop each other. We all know that. They're gonna. And the way the game is now, there's gonna be a ton of points scored. This is gonna be a lot like USC Texas, where last guy with the ball is gonna be, unless I miss my guess. I mean, now I know LSU has been better than Clemson this year. There's no question they have been, but I still think Clemson will score a lot tonight. I think this is going to be. I'll be shocked if this is not a real high-scoring game tonight.
Agreed. I think LSU wins. I wouldn't love laying the points, but the game being in the Superdome, and it's so hard to win it back to back like Clemson, and I just think it's LSU's year, man. I mean, it just sometimes you'll watch a team and you just think it's their time, it's their year. The game's in the Superdome. It's almost like this was predetermined.
Out of these four teams, who's going to get the confetti in a couple of weeks?
Chiefs, Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid finally does it. It's their time.
I
Chris
hope that's
Jones
so.
comes back for the Super Bowl,
I really
and
hope
the Chiefs do it.
I will be in Miami to view that, and I will be rooting for the Chiefs heavily in that day in that stadium because that will be a very happy moment for me. I'm rooting very hard for Andy because I agree with you. Andy's been a friend for a long time, and I agree. If he doesn't win it this year, I don't think he will ever win the Super Bowl. I really feel that – I think he's got a couple more good years before he calls it quits there. He's only 61, and they'll have a couple more good teams. But I agree with you. They'll never have a better setup than right now to win this Super Bowl.
Totally agree. I hope he gets it done. It's a little weird to me that Philly is split. I don't understand the Eagles fans that don't want to see him win with everything he did in Philly.
He did a great job in Philly. That's just sour grapes. That's not fair. And you know what they should be happy with? He sent them
sour grapes about the longest extended success in Eagles history.
And not only that, he sent them their coach. They should be happy about that. He talked the owner into hiring their coach who won him a Super Bowl.
1,000% correct, Mike. I guess maybe those people don't realize that.
Thanks very much for coming on. Appreciate it. Good luck with your stuff.
All right, my pleasure, Mike.
Thank you. Ross Tucker on NFL and everything else. So we have all that. I didn't forget the baseball. You know, the Steele thing, here's what I said about it. I think the punishment fit the crime. B, I'm happy the owner fired them. I'm glad he did. I think he showed integrity firing them. And C, I think Manfred really did a good job. And it looks like Cora is in trouble. Now, I did not think, I told you all along, that Beltran wasn't going to get anything. You cannot do anything to the other coaches, and Cora's not going to get anything for what happened in Houston. He wasn't in a position of authority. That belongs to the manager, the general manager, and the owner. The owner obviously wasn't culpable, and he fired the two people who were. His statement was they didn't originate it, but they did nothing to stop it. And clearly they condoned it. The use of technological equipment to steal signs, no matter, we can sit here and debate forever how much signs help, how many hitters take signs. We can go through that. It doesn't matter. What matters is they cheated, used technological advancement to cheat. That cannot be condoned. That has got to be stopped. Now, I've seen in a couple of places people, and I can't let this go because it's just so wrong-headed. Oh, look what happened to these guys, and they got 1 year. What about Pete Rose? You guys don't get it. Pete Rose did this to himself. He put himself on the suspended list because he cut a deal with Giamatti, and he and Giamatti hated each other. They cut a deal, though, that Giamatti would not stand up and say he bet on baseball, which Pete did not want to happen, even though he did. And Pete would not be able to get back in a uniform anywhere, which Giamatti was afraid of because he didn't trust Pete Rose. So Pete signed himself out, and he also told Pete, though, Pete, do not say you're innocent. Pete said he was innocent. Giamatti started whispering to everybody that he knew that Pete was guilty and also bet on baseball. Dowd told everybody that he knew and had the goods on Rose betting on baseball. If you read the Dowd report, you knew Pete had bet on, not against his team, not to bet on his team to lose. He did not do that. Now, there were certain pitches that he never bet on, but he bet on his team to win. He didn't bet on his team to lose. It's still a crime. And in baseball, but the reason he did never, Pete would have been back in 2 years if he had handled it the right way. If he had said, I was wrong, I'm going to take my punishment, I'm going to clean up my act, he would have been back and he would have been in the Hall of Fame 15 years ago. But he ticked off everybody in baseball. Then Giamatti died, and Fay Vincent had it in for him. And he also ticked off all the Hall of Famers, especially Bob Feller, who said, this guy lies every time his mouth moves. He lied to all of them. He lied to everybody about the fact he didn't bet on baseball. And until he wrote a book, and then he said, oh, yeah, you know what, I bet on baseball. We all knew he bet on baseball. If you read the Dowd report, you knew he bet on baseball. Pete did this to himself. It's not the same thing. Now, the 1 year suspension, these guys are going to be out a lot more than 1 year because they got a 1 year suspension. But they just got fired. Who's going to hire them? How are you going to hold a press conference and say, folks, here's my new manager? Oh, really? Maybe 5 years from now. Next year? No way. Excuse me. Where's your integrity? You're bringing in a guy who cheated. Oh, I know, but he's better now. Oh, yeah? Not an easy sell. Going to be a hard time for him to get. I'm maybe down the road, maybe 5 years down the road. The GM, I think, is dead. The manager, maybe 5 years from now, he gets a shot. Maybe. These guys are going to be out a long time. And it looks like Cora. Now, I don't know to what extent the Red Sox thing is going to be, whether it's going to be close to the same thing. If it is, then Cora's going to go down too. He's not going down for what happened in Houston, though. And nor did Beltran get anything. And I told you that wasn't going to happen because they're not in charge. So I think baseball and Manfred did a very good job on that. Now, to this weekend, as we said, the games coming up. You have both games. I want to see if either line moved. I do not believe that they did the first day. Let's see if they did. We have the Titans and the Chiefs with Kansas City a 7.5-point favorite at 305, and then we have the Packers and the Niners with San Francisco a 7-point favorite at 640. And the hard part here is you have the Titans who are red hot, and a lot of people are going to pick them. A lot of people are going to be on that bandwagon now. A lot of people. And with the Packers, the one problem is any number at 14 or under, you are extremely, extremely vulnerable. Unless you think the Niners are going to kill them. You can see 5 minutes left. San Francisco up 13. They're just going to sit in the soft zone, let him dink and dunk his way down the field, let him score with 1:10 left and no timeouts, line up for the onside kick. They fall on the onside kick and they celebrate a trip to the Super Bowl. And he got his touchdown. And now, Green Bay's up 6. San Francisco's up 6. Hey, is there a better candidate to have a backdoor cover ever than Aaron Rodgers? So that's why you almost have to be winning by 17 or more to feel comfortable in that game. And that's a lot. That's a lot. Because he is a legitimate backdoor cover. Legitimate of all. I mean, as much so of anybody you've ever seen. So you could see that absolutely being the case. Now, coming up at 6 o'clock, we'll be joined by the Fan. Just a couple of minutes, and we will preview tonight with the best analyst in the business. Gary Danielson is Mr. SEC. He's seen LSU in big games more than anybody this year. So he knows this LSU team in and out. Obviously, he knows plenty about Clemson. So here you have tonight a national championship game that really, hey, if you're not a college football fan, I would say, hey, this is an exciting game to watch. Number one, LSU's a 5-point favorite, but Clemson has been the livest of underdogs in their life. Plus, they haven't lost in forever. This quarterback has never lost a game as a starting quarterback. Clemson is 14-0. LSU is 14-0. Now, has LSU been more impressive? LSU this year scored 46 against Alabama. LSU in the last 5 games has averaged 53 points a game. They scored only 37 against Georgia, beating them 37-10. They scored 50 against Texas A&M. They scored over 50 against Arkansas, over 50 against Ole Miss. Averaged 53 points, and in the last 6 games, the LSU quarterback, who has put forth really one of the great displays, maybe the best quarterback play, sustained quarterback play in the history of college football. Burrow has done this, and this is against top flight SEC talent. 31 of 39 for 393 and 3 touchdowns. That's against Alabama. Then 32 of 42, 489 and 5 touchdowns. 23 of 28, 327 and 3 touchdowns. 23 of 32 for 352 and 3 touchdowns. 28 of 38 for 349 and 4 touchdowns. In those games, he was intercepted twice. And in his last game, in the semifinal game, they played Oklahoma, as you know. And in that game, he was 29 of 39 for 493 and 7 touchdowns. And remember, they called the dogs off. They scored 21 points in the first quarter. They had 49 points at the half. They called the dogs off after that. That was it. They did not go crazy. Burrow threw his last touchdown pass, his 7th of the game, okay, with 10 minutes left in the third quarter, which means there was still almost a half to play, and he already had 7 touchdown passes against Oklahoma. He didn't throw a fourth quarter touchdown. He could have thrown, legitimately, 10 touchdown passes and scored 80 points easily against Oklahoma. It was as dominant a game. Now, Oklahoma's a lousy defense, but when does it get silly? When your offense has, are you ready? Okay, folks, 692 yards of offense against Oklahoma. You heard me right. 160 yards rushing and 532 yards passing. 692 yards. They averaged 10 yards a play in the game. This team averages like 9 yards a play for the season. They had 31 first downs in the game. 31. And this guy has just been as good as any. Do I think he's the best quarterback I've ever seen in college? No. I thought the best college player I've ever seen is still the best player I've ever seen. And I think the best all-around player. Now, Jim Brown's the best all-around football player, but the best all-around player, my favorite, is Roger Staubach, as far as being a great collegian and a great pro, and an incredibly exciting player who could run, who could pass, who could do everything. Captain America, the whole thing, Captain Comeback, everything that you say about Roger. Roger was, to me, as good a football player as you could ever be. So if you ask me to pick a guy, he would be tremendous. I've seen plenty of great college offenses operate. The Nebraska offense, the triplets, Gill, Rozier, Fryer, put 80 points on people. Would average a point a minute when they had the starting unit in the game every game. Would average basically 8.8 yards a rush, crazy stuff like that. Were just lethal in every way. They were dynamic. They were almost unbeatable, and they got beat by. And they could have gotten a tie and gotten a national championship. They didn't. They went for 2, which was admirable, and they didn't make it. Rozier was on a sprained ankle in the second quarter on. Otherwise, that never would have happened. And they lost the game 31-30. The only game they lost in 2 years. They lost early in the first season in September on a disputed call at Penn State, and then won every game the rest of that year, and then won every game right up to the Orange Bowl game. So for 2 years, they were almost unbeaten. And used to put up basically 16, 70, and put up 84 on Minnesota once, which caused a lot of trouble. They were the best offense, I thought. But this LSU offense is close. It has been that dynamic. And it does it with the pass. They can rush, but they do it with the pass. And they do it with a control passing game that has just been absolutely lethal. With this guy averaging 75% and just, having open receivers everywhere you look. Can Clemson slow that down? Let's see. But Clemson also is a lethal offensive team that scores plenty of points. And I thought their game against Ohio State, which was a relatively low-scoring game, that game was 29-23, and it was a great game. That was a wonderful game between two pretty even teams. And the thing that scares you is that the Clemson defense did not look good against Oklahoma. Did not look good against Ohio State that night, especially the running game. But I think the Ohio State running back is a terrific player. I think that Dobbins is going to be a wonderful pro. And he had 174 yards in the game on 18 carries. He did a really good job. And Fields passed for a lot of yards, too. So they moved the ball really well. I don't think this defense is up to the level of the last couple of Clemson defenses. I don't think it's nearly as good. So they're going to have to win the game on offense. So I think this is going to be a very high-scoring game. You have two dynamic quarterbacks. You have wide receivers all over the place. Clemson's got some great wide receivers. And LSU's got some wonderful wide receivers. And you have two quarterbacks. You got the guy who's going to be taken in the first in the draft this year, the guy who's going to be taken first in the draft next year. So that sets the scene for a battle royale coming up tonight for the national championship. Really, it should be. I'm very much looking forward to it tonight. Clemson and LSU. They sure waited long enough to play the game. They will finally play the game, and then we'll have a great Sunday next week when the Titans and Henry go into Kansas City to take on the Chiefs, while you have the Packers and Rodgers heading to California, where Rodgers hails from, not far from where Rodgers went to college. He goes back home to California and tries to see if he can make his way to another Super Bowl and stun the upstart and young, very cocky 49ers. And the 49ers, they got a lot of brash players on that team, but they backed it up with their defense last week and their running game, which was very, very impressive. When we come back, we'll be joined by the fan, and we'll also be joined by Gary Danielson, and we'll preview tonight's national championship game right after this.
Yeah.
Mike's on. He's ready to go. On the Fan. New York Sports Radio. Mike's on. Mike's on. He'll get you the sports any way that he can. It's Mike Francesa on the Fan. Sports Radio 66 and 101.9 FM. WFAN.
On this Monday evening, we will take the time to preview tonight's national championship game, the highly anticipated, much awaited battle between unbeaten LSU and unbeaten Clemson. And we will do that with the best college football analyst there is, and that's Gary Danielson. Gary, welcome. How are you?
Mike, you were close. It was much anticipated, but it's been a long time.
That's my first question to you. Do you worry, since December 28th, this is way too long, and I think it's hurt some of the buildup for the game. I think it's taken some of the steam away from this dream matchup. Do you worry, Gary, these guys keeping these teams sharp for this game?
No, not that. I worry that, worry's not the word, but just as an observation. I mean, I like to watch football. A lot of people love to watch football. We all watched all weekend. You see the ratings. Millions and millions of people. And are they going to watch tonight? I don't know.
I think they will. I think they will.
Hardcore. Yeah, I just think for the national game, though, you know how the Final
I agree.
Four in
Listen, I
basketball
agree.
it holds the nation. This is not holding the nation.
I totally agree. I totally agree, especially at 28th of December, long
Right.
time ago. It killed the rest of the bowl games, absolutely killed
Yep.
them. I mean, I played golf during Michigan, Alabama to tell you how bad that is. I mean, so think
Wow.
about that. I was in
I didn't
Florida.
do that, but
yeah, I mean,
but
so
I think a lot of
that's how
people-
crazy it is. I mean, I have to admit, it bothered me. I loved it, especially how good, let's be real, how good was the Clemson-Ohio State game? It was a great game.
Great game. Yes, and I just thought, coming the day after the big NFL weekend, this is the NFL's biggest weekend. You got the 4 games, doubleheaders, going into Sunday night. You're barely in talk radio and talk TV now. You're barely going to get one segment on this game.
No question. And not only that, you had baseball come down with this
Exactly.
bombshell today.
Exactly.
And you know what? I am one of the few guys who's going to preview it because, I care about it, and I think a lot of my audience will. So
I know
Yeah.
ESPN and ABC.
Yes.
They have the game, and they're trying. I don't know what.
But
the
I agree with
strategy
you.
is.
I think everything you said is true. I think it's too long. I think they have to do better. And I'll tell
Right.
you this: I never thought I would be behind them expanding it, but I think now they are going to expand the playoff. I
don't
think it's
know.
going to happen. I think they will. I think now they have heard everything else so much. I think they need to expand the playoff. I really do.
Well, I think clearly this is going to be a tough year to expand because clearly there was 3 teams better than everybody else this year, and that showed up in the playoffs. But let's just go back. I just think the Monday after the biggest day in the NFL is a tough sell. Now I know they want their Monday night game, and I get it. That's a trademark for them to have. I think it should be before. The way people get hooked. I think the football watchers have accepted Thursday as a football night.
I agree.
I'm wondering why they can't have this game Thursday night
I don't
or the big weekend
And
of the
Thursday
NFL.
is a very good TV night. It's one of the biggest TV nights, other than Sunday.
I
It's
think
the
they
biggest.
need to rethink it.
Yes,
I really
agree.
do. It's too long, too far into the NFL playoffs.
I agree.
It's hard to get the people. That said, we got a good football.
All right, here we go. Now, let me ask you these because you can answer them better than anybody. Number one, has anybody ever had a better year at quarterback in college football than Burrow?
I think one of the 3 best years. I think Cam Newton took a team that was devoid of players. I think there was only one other NFL player on that team that amounted to anything, and that was, Nick Fairley, a defensive lineman. Cam Newton carried that Auburn team that year almost by himself. I think Vince Young at Texas, and now I think what Joe Burrow has done this year at LSU are the 3 greatest years by a quarterback in one single season.
To win one game, would you take Lawrence or would you take Burrow?
I'm going to take Burrow because of the age right now. Joe Burrow is older than Lamar Jackson. He is a veteran football player, and Trevor's going to get better next year than he is this year. So in one game, the tiebreaker for me is the experience of Joe Burrow, but it doesn't mean Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he beat Tua last year. So what Trevor brings, and I thought Dabo was very smart about this. I've got 3 or 4 advantages on the board that I think Clemson can take.
Number one is
advantage
his
of and
running
win the
ability, clearly.
and they didn't use it. That's what I think Dabo was so smart about. It was like a jockey that didn't put the whip to his horse through the whole 3/4 of the race. He just let it kind of run and didn't really. And everybody was like, "What's wrong with Clemson?" He knew he couldn't ride this team too hard until it got close to that final stretch where he could say, "All right, you ready to play? Because we're going to play now." And he did not run Trevor Lawrence, and you can see what a difference he is. Because if you watch the Ohio State game, Ohio State had the better team. Should have beat them.
Yep.
Easily should have beat them. Top to bottom, they get their running back hurt. They leave 2 touchdowns on the board. They got a fumble touchdown called back, and they lose one of their best players on defense on a targeting call, and they still had the ball in Justin Fields' hands to win the game at the end of it.
And threw a terrible interception. Yep.
Well, the receiver pulled off. I'll give him that. It was a terrible interception. I don't know if it was all his fault,
Gotcha.
but it was a tough interception. But, yes, Trevor Lawrence's running, they saved it. And that could be one of the advantages in this game that they could take advantage.
Now, let me ask you one other one, and then we'll get back to the game. For 10, I make you the general manager of the whatever team you want, Detroit Lions, whoever else you want. 10 years, you're taking Burrow, you're taking Lawrence.
Oh, it's a great question. I was hoping you would ask because I don't think there is an answer to this. I mean, it's It's Marino Elway-ish
Wow.
type of. I really think they're going to have that.
So you
type
think
of
Burrow is
impact.
going to be really good?
My comparison, everybody's took a lot of
Is
comparisons.
Brady's, you said.
No, it wasn't. I didn't exactly, but I could see where people have used that comparison. I said there are attributes about him that are Brady-esque, but the way he plays, he's a much better athlete than Tom. He plays like an old-timer that I played with. He plays like Kenny Anderson. Okay,
Oh,
he's
that's
much
right.
more
You did
athletic.
you did say that to me before, Kenny
Yes,
Anderson.
and I
Kenny
think
Anderson was a wonderful player.
He was
Really a tremendous
yes,
player. Yes.
tremendous player for the Cincinnati Bengals. More athletic than Tom's the
And
greatest.
deadly
I'll give it to
accurate.
him.
And deadly
accurate. He was a 65% passer when the rest of the league
Absolutely.
was a 55% passer.
Absolutely.
So that's why I think Cincinnati's going to take him. And listen, Trevor's going to be good, but he's going to get better. Trevor's not there yet. He still doesn't quite understand it in the offense he runs, but his upside is spectacular.
Right.
I'll give him that.
Now, Ohio State gets 500-plus yards against Clemson. This is not the Clemson defense of the past 2 years. We know that. I make you the defensive coordinator tonight against this guy. How are you going to be? Are you going to drop and cover? Are you going to blitz? Are you going to mix it up? What are we going to do to get this guy off his mark?
If you watched the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday, the thing I'll give credit to, and Tony was all over it, is I don't know if there is a defense for a quarterback like this. Okay, and I don't think with the weapons that Joe has and his experience and the way he's got NFL coaching now and the tough games that he's played, no individual defense is going to work. You do have to do a bit of everything, but you also have to understand. And I go back, I played my ball in Detroit, and I was there when the Pistons were playing, and they were taking the championship away, from Michael Jordan. And Joe Dumars always had the assignment to cover Michael Jordan, and Joe used to talk about it, that you can't get down about the fact that you can play perfect defense and he's going to put 38 to 40 on you. You have to still run back down the court and play the same tough defense again. And that's the toughest thing when you face these great quarterbacks is you can play perfect and he might put 38 points on you. And you just can't get down and start gambling and go outside of the defense. I really think Clemson, and you're right, they're not. They lost 3 number-1 draft picks, Colleen Farrell, Wilkins, and Lawrence from last year, and their 4th guy, Mullen, was also drafted. I mean, they're not the same defense. They're not going to match up against this LSU offense. What they really have to hope for is Brent Venables does kind of what he did to Tua last year, catch him in a couple bad plays. I mean, all year last year, Tua did not have a bad game until he nicked his ankle against Georgia, and he had his worst game in the championship. This year, it'd be hard to find a game, maybe Auburn. I did that game.
Why was the Auburn game? Now, they had 500 yards offense. Why did they only score 20 points?
All right, here's the answer. They did exactly what Alabama did to Clemson last year in this game. They put close to 500 yards against a extremely talented Clemson defense. They stopped them in the red zone. And Clemson did the same thing to Ohio State. Ohio State went up and down the field, and they forced them to kick field goals in the red zone. That's what Auburn did to Joe Burrow. But I don't see Clemson doesn't have a Derek Brown and a Marlon
doesn't have those
Davis.
kind of linemen, no.
Exactly. Well, I don't know how they can rush 3. I don't know even how they can rush 4. They're going to have to blitz him, and that they're just going to have to hope he misses some throws. They need a B game from Joe Burrow, and I don't even know if he had a B game against Auburn. Auburn was very talented that day, and their pass rush was effective. He just didn't score touchdowns. They still put over 500 yards up against Auburn in that game. They just didn't score touchdowns. The same formula they used against Ohio State is what they have to do to LSU. They have to force them to kick field goals.
Gary, we're talking about Gary Danielson. You do the SEC. You know how good the SEC is
right.
as a league. It's a head above everybody else. We know that. In his last including the Oklahoma game where he was
Right.
outrageous, okay, where he could have thrown 10 touchdown passes. His last
Easy,
touchdown pass
easy.
came with 25 minutes left in the game.
Right.
He could have thrown 10 touchdown passes. He threw 7. His last 6 games, 25 touchdowns, 2 intercepts against Georgia, against Alabama,
Right,
against top teams, 25-2. 7 in the last game, and they've averaged 53 points in their last 5 games, and that's counting top SEC teams in Oklahoma.
Well,
Can
and
anybody keep them in the 40s?
Well, I'll give you a positive and a negative on that. Okay, this ain't Oklahoma. They're playing.
Right.
I mean, Oklahoma
Oklahoma's defense
okay?
is embarrassing. I agree.
All right. I mean, and it was hard to watch. On the opposite side, they're going to get the best player, his best weapon back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire didn't even play. So they're going to get better on offense. But, Brent Venables, the defensive coordinator for Clemson, he's used to big games. He's used to playing against big quarterbacks now. Boy, he did not do much with Justin Fields. This is not an elite Clemson defense.
It's not.
Can
Clemson outscore them?
That's what they got to do.
Can they do it?
When I was watching the game yesterday and Houston was up 24-0, what I think if I was Bill O'Brien,
What a
I
dumb
would have
movie
told,
made up 20.
Well,
You can't
yeah,
fake
I
that
didn't
punt.
like the
That
fake
made
punt
no
either.
sense.
I
That made no
I
sense.
wasn't for that either. But I would have said something else to my team. We got 3 quarters. If we can score a touchdown a quarter, they can't beat us. As long as we don't turn the ball over, we score a touchdown. They don't have enough time to score enough points, and that's what I think in this game is. You got to put up. Clemson's got to look at this and say, we got to score. I mean, we're not going to hold these guys.
But Clemson's not going to go short fields here. They're going to score in chunks, too. They're going to take the field in chunks, which means they're going to score quickly. And if you score quickly, they're right back on the field.
Here's the advantage that Clemson has in the game. They can hang their hat on, I think, 3 things offensively.
The running of the quarterback, number 1.
Yes.
Yes.
At the speed of Etienne.
Etienne's a wonderful player. He's an
And
underrated player. Yes.
And he's fast, and he catches short passes and makes long gains.
No question.
LSU plays man-to-man. He could gash them. And in Higgins and Ross, because LSU is going to play bump and run man-to-man coverage all over the field, they've got 2 6'5" receivers going against not small corners. Stingley's 6'2", but those 50-50 balls they catch. They did it against Alabama. They did it against everybody. They could make the man-to-man coverage of LSU pay.
So it's 40. You look at you're telling me you're Clemson,
I think they got to get in the 40s.
Your Clemson prescription is they're going to have to score over 40 points to win.
And that's where I go to the Joe Dumars thing. You've got to tell your team that you just got to keep putting your hand up, making shoot it over your hand. I'm not comparing them to Michael Jordan, but the mindset is, just because they're scoring doesn't mean you're playing bad defense. And sooner or later, if we keep doing it well, we'll get a break. Joe Burrow will throw one of those passes that he hit against Georgia and he hit against Alabama and he'll throw one a foot short and we'll get it. And that's what they got to think about in this game.
You see LSU as much as anybody. You watch the SEC every week. You know how good the league is. You know Clemson inside and out.
Yep. I don't know.
Can anybody stop LSU?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think LSU can. The LSU team, the most underrated part of their team is the part we haven't even really talked about. I mean, their defense is now getting healthy. Clavion Chasen on his back, he's healthy. Their inside players, they got a nose tackle, Tyler Shelvin. Tyler Shelvin's his name, number 72. He's a monster. Everybody in the league talks about the fact that if you have any chance of running the ball against LSU, you got to handle the nose, and he's almost unblockable inside. He's 340 pounds, and he's one of the best football players in the league that nobody even talks about. They're tough. They're a good defense. They get caught because they play man-to-man a lot, and you can get big chunks, as you mentioned. But their defense is vastly underrated, and then they're flexible in their offense. Thaddeus Moss is a tough matchup, Randy Moss's son, and Clyde Edwards. They'll line up all over the field. They use NFL type of pass patterns and strategies. And Joe Burrow, is a fifth or sixth year player. I mean,
All
like
right.
I said, he could be in any other sport. He's 2 years into the pros already.
Why did Burrow emerge because of the offensive coordinator, or is there another reason why it took him this long to emerge?
Well, first of all, he needed a little experience in playing. He hadn't played football in 3 years. So last year, even if Burrow and the same system was there a year ago, there would have been a growing curve for him, just getting ready to play football again. But there's no doubt that 2 years and a better system than last year has put everything together for Joe, and he's been extremely focused. He's a good, tough football player. He is extremely motivated. He's as cocky as he comes. Now, that is a Brady comparison that holds up. I covered Tom at Michigan. He went through all that stuff with he and Drew Henson back in the day, the Yankee player that played it.
I remember he took his job.
Yes, he took. They battled.
Yes.
Remember, they would each play a quarter, and whoever had the good first half, and it really grinded on Tom because he thought he was the better quarterback, and he carried that chip all the way into the NFL. Well, Joe's got that same chip and that same competitive instincts, and which shows on the field. He's extremely confident. He made a lot of great plays a year ago. The team and his growth, it just wasn't ready for where they are this year.
They scored 37 against Georgia. They scored 46 against Alabama. They scored 63 against Oklahoma. They scored 50 against A&M. They scored 50 against Ole Miss. They scored 50 against Arkansas. They've averaged 53 their last 5 games. They are a runaway train right now.
I would say that you go in this game and you pretty much can tell your team, if you're Brent Venables, if we can hold them in the 30s, we can win this game.
If we can, so the target is to try
hold them in the 30s.
Somehow keep them under 40 points.
That's what I would say. If I would, now, there's no coach that says that, but I think when Dabo and Brent get together and they say, Brent, sell to your team that they're going to score. Don't lose confidence. That's what I've been telling them. That's what I've been telling them for 2 weeks. Now, he's going to come up with some stuff. He always does. But, as Joe Burrow said, he was quoted as saying, he says, I don't even know why I watch film anymore. He says, the last half of the year, anything I watched on tape, they did not play in our game.
Is LSU ready for this? I mean, they've had this emergence to the big time. We wondered if they were ready for Alabama. Were they ready finally to take their spot here? It seems like they've been more than ready. Are they ready for this last step?
I think they're going to feel some pressure playing at home. Often teams do. It's going to be almost an 80% LSU home team crowd. If things don't go well, they could press in this game, feeling the pressure of closing out this season. Reminds me a little bit about the 2011 team that played Alabama in the 2012 National Championship in the Dome. They wanted to finish it so bad. It was at home. They had a perfect record going in the game, and they were tight in the game. Playing at home sometimes does do that. But I don't think they're I just thought Alabama was a better team than the club. Let's put it this way: if this was, I know why. If Dabo's hearing this, it's too late for him to hear this.
It is.
So he won't be able to use this.
Right.
And he's been a master at playing the underdog for a team that's been undefeated 2 years in a row. Okay, but to me, if this was a 7-game series in other sports, I think Clemson would be fortunate to steal a game.
Wow. So they're going to have to play a perfect game tonight.
I think so. LSU is going to have 7 to 10 first-round draft picks playing on the field in this game. Not this year, but over the next 4 years playing on this field.
Unbelievable. Thanks very much for coming on. Appreciate it very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you, Gary.
You
Gary Danielson, back after this. It is the legend in luxury auto, as we know. So go visit a Ray Katina in your neighborhood. They have a whole bunch of different cars. And, of course, they are the premier Mercedes-Benz dealer. So LSU and Clemson, and I agree. Clemson is very good offensively, have big receivers, great back, tremendous quarterback who can run and pass, and he's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. This year will be obviously the LSU quarterback who has been just sensational. This LSU team has been a juggernaut, averaging 53 points against top-level competition in the last 5 games. 53 points a game. I mean, that is stunning when you think about it. So if LSU kept them to 37 and won this game 38-37 or won it 41-40, it would be a great job all the way around. I don't think LSU is going to be under 37, 38 points minimum. I don't think they'll be under that. Could Clemson score them in? They could, but Clemson is not a great defensive team. They're a good offensive team because they really gave up a lot of yardage to Ohio State. They gave up 500 yards in the game. They gave up 300 passing. They gave up 174 yards to Dobbins, who I think is a wonderful, I think 184 yards, as a matter of fact. It's a wonderful running back and be a very, very good pro. Now, of course, the other story, and I'm sure Steve Summers is coming up after me, we'll be dealing with that, will be the baseball. Like I said, Manfred, right job, suspension, very fair and very right on the, very much pinpoint, right on target. I think the owner did the right thing in getting rid of them. I think it's going to be a long time for them coming back. And it sounds like Cora is in for the same fate. Now, does he get fired too? Let's see what the suspension is, and I would not be surprised if he does. And I'll tell you, it's going to be a hard, long time for these guys to come back because I think the suspensions might be 1 year, but you know what? I can't see anybody hiring them. What owner is going to, put out the buffet table, lay out the shrimp and the roast beef and say, guys, we're moving into a new era. Here are the guys that we are going to believe in. Oh, really? What a feast that will be. Imagine, so let me get this straight. You care nothing about integrity. You care nothing about anything. You hired a guy who did, not easy to do. Maybe 5 years from now, the manager gets another job. Maybe he begins a slow reclamation of his image. But boy, I'll tell you, it's going to take years and years for that to happen. These are not 1 year penalties for these guys. They could wind up being lifetime penalties for these guys because although they may be free to come back in a year, baseball is going to turn a very, very cold shoulder to them for years and years to come. And you know what? Rightly so. And it sounds like, and I know no one else who was not an authority there. Cora would not have gotten in trouble for Houston. Beltran is in no trouble for Houston. None of the players are in trouble for Houston. But Cora's in a bunch of hot water for Boston. And if it is as bad as everybody thinks, then I think he could be looking at the same fate, both in terms of suspension, some places you're hearing more, and in terms of him walking the plank. And you can see Boston in the throes of a major rebuilding process out of this. I think they are headed in that way where they'll break this down, make some trades, and start over. They've won a lot recently. They can afford to do that. They're not afraid to do that, while the Yankees fear doing that. So the Yankees, who are the 5-2 favorites to win it all this year, really could have a very softened American League on a year where they are the strongest they've been in many years. Steve Summers is next. We'll see you tomorrow.